3 men in Essex have been jailed for longer for protesting a migrant hotel than somebody who actually R a child has been sentenced to. I'm going to go through the statistics here, but we're going to talk in this video a little bit more about two-tier justice. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all my videos as soon as they are released. Well, let's go through this. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about a migrant, Hadush Kabatu. He was sentenced for 1 year for R-ing a 14-year-old girl and a woman. So that was 2 people that he attacked. However, protesters who had kicked off about Epping, yes, okay, they shouldn't have done what they'd done. They'd got a little bit violent, they'd gone a little bit far. Stuart Williams got 2 years, 4 months. Martin Pegram got 2 years, 2 months. And Dean Smith got 1 year and 10 months. Here is the reason. Because they often say that sentences ought to reflect what is the greatest threat to society. And in the view of the establishment, the greatest threat to society now is people like Tommy Robinson, are people like the protesters against Epping. The reason is because that challenges the central theory that Britain should be a multicultural society and there should be unlimited and uncontrolled immigration. Do you remember that fake Twitter account where it was set up saying, the grooming gangs are the price we have to pay for a multicultural society? And Labour MPs were starting to retweet it. It's absolutely astonishing, isn't it? When you look at somebody like Owen Jones, who says that every woman should always be believed when she makes an allegation against a man, unless that man is a Muslim of Pakistani descent, unless that man is an asylum seeker, in which case we should be much more careful. And of course, he also said, and I think it was despicable, when he saw that woman covered in blood after being kidnapped in Gaza, he said, well, it was unclear what had happened to her. Hey, you know what? The reason you bleed down there, there's only one reason why that happens. Well, there's 2 reasons, but one of them is not quite as, I'm going to say this in the most polite way, explosive. But that is the issue, isn't it? The Crown Prosecution Service is reflecting the views of our government and the views of the people that they're around and the views of the establishment, which says that we have to remember that whilst jihadism is a threat, the biggest threat is far-right extremism. We saw what I call the Neil Basuization of our policing, when Neil Basu turns round and of course we all know these pro-jihadi, even though he pretends not to, but he's talking about all of these far-right groups. Let me talk about National Action in the Friar Penketh pub in Warrington, the Wetherspoons. It's a place I know quite well. What they were doing was, they were talking about harming Labour MPs, and I get that, but they're basically just drinking and making videos. Then there was a group of far-right terrorists that was on Channel 4. Oh my God, what were they doing? They were exercising in a park in Vauxhall and then going off on one about how much they disliked immigration. What they're attempting to do is they're attempting to constantly make something clear. They've got a quota, haven't they? That for every jihadi they arrest, for every grooming gang member they arrest, they have to find somebody from the far right to demonstrate that it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The greatest threat to this country is not it's not Islamic terrorism, it is in fact far right. But when have we actually seen any of these plots come to fruition? Of course, there was the nail bomb attacker a few years ago, and there have been cases of plots against people. I think there was a lunatic who was trying to hurt Holly Willoughby. But actually, in reality, what we've seen time and time again is deliberately harsh punishments in order to mitigate what has taken place within the Islamic community. And I've always said that I don't hold the Islamic community responsible for everything that's happened. What I hold responsible is uncontrolled immigration, the way that we're not willing to admit that people are coming to this country who don't feel a part of this country, don't care about this country. Let me tell you something about why migrants commit more crime than ordinary people. You think about this. It's all about community. When I was in Belgium, I didn't know who my local council was. I didn't know who my local MP was. I didn't care about any of those things. I couldn't speak the language. When the local authority wrote me letters about my council tax, I just threw them in the bin because I didn't even understand what they said because they were written in French and Wallonian, I think it is. I might be wrong on the second language. Sorry, didn't even know what the languages were. Let's just leave it at that. Not that I couldn't read them. I didn't even know what the languages were. Therefore, I was so massively not a part of the community, I didn't care. If you are considering robbing your local sweet shop, you're not going to do it if your uncle owns it. That's the important point here. And so we do have a problem with migrant crime. But the bigger problem now that I'm worried about is this two-tier justice, this two-tier sentencing. And we've seen it in the case of these guys. Look, I don't know precisely what Stuart Williams, Martin Pegram and Dean Smith did. But I will have to say, I think Hadush Kabatu, when he arred a 14-year-old and a woman, must have been worse. But we've seen cases like this time and time again, haven't we? Where Tommy Robinson goes to prison for a longer period of time for attempting to expose a grooming gang than the grooming gang actually gets themselves. And similarly, when we looked at the most important piece of two-tier justice of them all, which is Anjam Chowdhury versus Tommy Robinson. Whatever you think about Tommy Robinson, they've been desperate to call him a T for many years, and he simply isn't one, whereas Anjam Chowdhury genuinely was. There is no point in continuing this injustice, because what we're doing by having quotas of white people to throw in prison in order to mitigate the poor behaviour of ethnic minorities, what you are doing is not only foisting criminality onto people, but you're also denying that criminality genuinely exists. And finally, you are locking up entirely innocent people in order to mitigate the behaviour of these people. And so I end up in a position of worrying about my own family. Of course, my family, my nieces and nephews, exist with original sin, don't they? The original sin of being white. They have to apologise for being white, for being Christian, for being British in every day of their lives at school. But they also take a risk now of something else, that if they are genuine political activists, they may well go to prison under trumped-up fake charges from people who themselves are disguising criminality on behalf of migrant gangs. I said in another video that I've just published that Keir Starmer this week has basically made it, has basically classified it, has basically said that we can't publish the figures on migrant crime because that would be damaging to our society. What about when they brought the Afghan resettlement scheme? They brought all those people to Britain and they said, we can't tell the public what's going on. We've got to have an injunction over this, because if the public knew we were bringing 100,000 Afghans to the country, then there would be uproar and there would be potentially violence. That's the first time in British history that they've decided that a legitimate political debate should not be allowed to happen, and the courts should prevent it from happening. Two-tier justice, two-tier policing, all of it needs to go. We need a Great Repeal Act, and the next government needs to do that. Thanks so much for watching this video. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, I want you to hit the bell notification icon. It's the best way to absolutely guarantee you get all my videos as soon as they are released. Until next time, goodbye.